Holy nostalgia.
On today's episode of Nostalgia 101, we get schooled by Matt Landis on the resurgence of swing in the 90s. School's in session. All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Nostalgia 101 here at the Nostalgia Test Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Dissinger, here in LA, and I'm here with my longtime friend and co-host, Manny Coelho, there on Long Island. Manny, how you doing tonight?
Dan, I'm all right. You're bringing me to school too many times. I've been, we went from no 101s to back-to-back 101s. But
Yeah.
I'm excited about this one, of course. I'm excited because I didn't think we were going to have to do another episode about swing. But it looks like someone out there actually wanted to do it. So I want to get schooled by it
and that's
prove
the
me
thing.
wrong.
I think what's cool about the 101s has been both us putting the call out for people to come and getting people to come on, like Matt tonight, and also like people reaching out, which everyone here at the Nostalgia Test, all the fans of the Nostalgia Test podcast, be ready for some really amazing episodes with authors and professionals in the field. I mean, it's been pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to continually doing the Nostalgia 101 episodes. But tonight,
let me ask you something though before we get into bringing in the guest. Have you, after our little mini episode that we did, did you like listen to swing like again? Like did you try I absolutely did not. Like I was just like, so I was like, well, maybe after talking about it all the time, I'll do it. Maybe I'll like ironically listen to the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and I just couldn't.
But that would be ska, though.
True. Yeah. Damn it. Yeah.
No, but
I don't know. Right. It all gets mixed up sometimes.
Yeah.
So
I did listen to a little bit, and it was interesting to hear it and be like, maybe it's better that I'm glad we're doing the 101 because that I think is the most interesting part. Like not so much all of everything, but like learning about it. But I think our guest here, Matt Landis, who thank you so much, Matt, for being here tonight.
Yeah, Matt, now you could talk.
Yeah.
You said your name 3 times.
It's like Beetlejuice.
Yeah, exactly. Which we just did an episode about that. So I should have been wanting to watch the second one. I've gotten some good reviews, I heard.
I heard some good things too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, remember how you said what's his name was only in it for like 14 minutes last time?
I thought Michael Keaton was supposed to only be in it for like 14
He actually put
minutes.
that in like I can't. I'll only go a minute longer than the last one because or else then you're going to kill the vibe of Beetlejuice because just enough.
Sure.
Leaves you wanting more.
We'll see.
So, but I've heard good reviews of someone who's really into horror. And really into the first one was like, of course, it's not as great as the first one, but they did a really good job. So
excellent, nice tangent, Manny. That was a good one. And no, Matt, 4th time we're saying Matt's name. Matt, thank you so much for being here and for reaching out after putting the CFP out there, out there. So yeah, why don't you let our audience know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump right in because I have so many amazing I have so many questions.
Sure. I'm an adjunct professor at Stockton University in their General Studies program, which is their interdisciplinary studies program, and at Rowan University, both of them in South Jersey, in their music industry and music department. I teach courses on the history of popular music, music business, stuff like that. And I also was a member of the Brooklyn-based cabaret-punk collective, the Inferno Friendship Society, from 2009-ish up until it ended when the lead singer and founder of the group, Jack Terrycloth, died a couple years ago.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. Excellent. This is, when you reached out, it was interesting when Manny and I did the mini episode and we said the only way we're doing this is if we can get someone on in a 101 series way. And I was like, let me go to my academic world, put the CFP out there, see what we get. and put the call out. And when you emailed me, it was amazing because I got it, like the email came quickly in a way. I was like, oh, okay. I got like it was someone like reached out right away. And when you said also you were part of this band and I was listening to some of the clips, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. Like because I feel like not only with your academic background and that, but like with your musical background, that this is going to be interesting to have this conversation. So what I guess my first question would be like, what called out to you in terms of like being wanting to come on and have this conversation? I know, to yeah, well that's be it. Like, what called out to you to kind of be on to have this conversation?
So one of the things is just my experience teaching about the original era of swing in the 1940s and 1930s and 40s, and how students responded to that and that music, and how even without necessarily being aware of it, because we're getting to a point now where even kids' grandparents might not have been cognizant of swing music when they were younger, but it still evokes this sense of nostalgia for them because of the way that it's used in popular culture, in in movies and in television, and then partially part of the 90s swing revivals, like the movie Swingers. If you have kids in my classes that are into indie film, they see that and they're like, oh, okay, so like, it's kind of like this stuff. And
Yeah.
So it was just sort of interesting to me that anyone would be interested in talking about the 90s swing revival, because it was such a weird and awkward thing to live through as a teenager associated with punk music.
Yeah.
And I remember there being a real sense of like, are these guys nerds? Or are these guys racist? Because it's like a lot of the dudes in those bands looked like, dressed like a lot of like the people in like oi bands, but they were all like white guys from the inner city, and it's like, I don't know about this. And then like you listen to the music, and the funny thing is that I learned more about music. I was like, this isn't even swing. Like it's actually just jump blues. Like it's way closer to stuff like Louis Jordan and Wynonie Harris and Louis Prima than it is Benny Goodman or Duke Ellington or the Fletcher Henderson Orchestra or stuff like that. So,
wow, that's interesting. Yeah, Manny, you gonna say something?
Just thinking about the outfits that you were just thinking about.
Yeah.
I'm like imagining,
Yeah.
like calling them nerds or not. And it was interesting that I remember being around that. I forget what year what grade we would be in, but I remember certain what you would quote unquote called swing, the swing revival, like being on like the top 100, like Z100 would be playing, what's that one song? Now it's like escaping me.
It's like,
but
well, like there was a few. It's like Zoot Suit Riot.
Yes,
yeah.
There you
go. You and Me and the Bottle Makes Three.
Mm-hmm.
Hell by the Squirrel Nut Zippers, which is really not a swing song.
It's not, but
it's a calypso song.
Yeah, and they've been smashed into that sort of revival space.
But they did have swing songs.
Yeah,
like The Suits Are Picking Up the Bill is absolutely a swing tune.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, like we brought it up like the last thing. Like you even had The Mask come out, and Jim Carrey's in a zoot suit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like how embedded it was for that moment, and like then it kind of just like disappeared. Like what do you like? It was just interesting. Like what brought it back? Have you like studied that? Like what was it?
So there was a real dissatisfaction during that time period with the direction that punk music was going in, because of the emergence of pop punk for one thing, and that's mostly sort of like the the Hot Topic and Warped Tour version of punk
Mhm.
that was sort of becoming more popular, is you had a lot of people in a lot of punk scenes, especially in urban punk scenes, so LA, Baltimore, Chicago, so on and so forth, that were sort of really dissatisfied with the direction that punk was heading because it was becoming very commercial. And so, like, that's where Royal Crown Review came from. And they're maybe the earliest of the 90s swing revival bands. I think they were active starting in like 94 or 95 maybe, and they really started picking up traction around 96, 97, 98. And you know, that's right when the explosion of 90s swing happens. And so, like, a lot of this was an attempt by people in the punk scene to find something that had a sense of style in a way that, you know, punk has a unique sense of style.
Yeah.
And spoke to, and this has always been a big thing in punk, authenticity, right? That the music was authentic, which is sort of ironic because anytime a musical movement is chasing authenticity, you can almost guarantee they're going to be bullshit. Because authenticity is like this super nebulous thing you can never actually grab onto, right? You know, from an academic perspective, it's like if you've read your Adorno, you're like, oh, I'm in trouble. I'm chasing authenticity.
Yeah.
But that is still what I think a lot of the impetus behind the 90s swing revival was trying to find something that was punk adjacent. Almost in a way similar to like what rockabilly was in the original punk scene in the early 80s in America. Right. You know, bands like the Cramps and the Gun Club and the Blasters and, you know, the Knitters, which is a side project of the LA punk band X and stuff like that, is there was sort of like, okay, punk's cool, but there's still something that's not, like, it's a little too artsy, it's a little too effete depending on who you're talking to. And so rockabilly becomes a thing. And I think in some ways people were looking at punk and saying it's becoming a little too commercial, it's becoming a little too poppy. And so the rockabilly thing is taken, and there was still rockabilly, like the Cramps were still making records when the swing revival was happening. So it's like, you can't do that. You know, like the Cramps are still out there, Social D's still out there. What's something different we could do that might go along with our American traditional tattoos and our, you know, we're already haunting vintage stores and thrift stores looking for rockabilly duds. Just go back another decade and we've got a whole new thing.
Wow. That's really interesting. It's something I never would have thought to kind of have, like, see that resurgence connected to like the punk scene and also this rise of pop punk, which I mean the thing is, it's funny because like I think around that time I would have been, say, like 96, we're coming into our as freshmen in high school, 96. So before that we're in middle school, 94, 95, right? So like pop punk, where we, like, for us, that we actually come into that more than the punk scene that came before that. And it's interesting to think that scene created this other need to kind of go backwards and find something else, as if something else is like kind of swallowing another scene up.
Yeah. I mean, so like the thing that you have to remember also during that time period is like, there's not a big post-punk scene. You know, 94, 95, like you don't have a bunch of kids wearing Joy Division Unknown Pleasures t-shirts like you do now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You haven't had the sort of explosion of bands from the UK and Brooklyn in the early 2000s, like the Strokes and Franz Ferdinand and Arctic Monkeys and all that stuff. That's still a few years away. So like trying to appeal to post-punk or no wave isn't going to work because people look at goth music and they think Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, right?
Yeah.
During that time period.
Right.
And like, so looking forward, like trying to like create a new post-punk thing isn't really an option. And I mean, the other thing is that from a musical standpoint, looking forward doesn't very often get rewarded. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Ian Curtis never saw the success of Joy Division, you know, at all. And, you know, it's like either it doesn't get rewarded or it gets recuperated, like disco did. You know, disco started as predominantly music that was made by queer people and queer people of color at that. And then it sort of, you know, it becomes ABBA and the Bee Gees and everything else.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Huh. So it's interesting, like to go back to, you know, even what you were saying before, like how even the swing resurgence, the music's just like from what I'm hearing, like when you say like, and even when I listen back to it, it was like, this sounds like a cover of another era. Like it kind of like feels like a watered down version of
two of the
another
biggest, so one of the biggest songs of that era, maybe the biggest, which is Jump, Jive, and Wail by the Brian Setzer Orchestra,
Yeah.
is a Louis Prima song.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's not even a swing song. It would be more accurately characterized as jump blues. We can get into the difference between swing and jump blues if you want to, but that's a pretty nerdy conversation.
Yeah. No problem.
So like swing was this music of distraction.
Yeah.
Coming out of the Great Depression and the beginning of World War II.
Right.
And so you have this music that is designed to distract people from hard times, right? And you have the New Deal going on, so the arts are being funded, and you have organized crime, sort of, and the black market economy ballasting nightclub culture in a way that traditional economies can't. And so you have clubs like the Roxy and the Cotton Club and the Ritz and all of these places, which are just, you know, both which are segregated, you know, mind you, as well.
Yeah.
And you can afford to have these big bands with, you know, large horn sections and so on and so forth. And then the invention of better microphones in the late 30s and 1940s ushers in the era of crooners, Bing Crosby, early Sinatra, and then that leads to sort of Dino and the Rat Pack and all that other stuff. And microphones make it possible for, you know, these guys to sing over big bands. And that becomes super, super lucrative from a record selling perspective.
Yeah.
But what happens at the end, or as World War II rages on, and at the end of World War II, is guys are going out on longer or multiple deployments, right? Some of them aren't making it back. As the war effort winds down, there's sort of a question of what's going to happen to the economy. You know, one of the things that really pushed the swing age was prohibition.
Yeah.
That's been overturned by the end of World War II for 2 decades now, right?
Wow.
So even that black market economy that was sort of funding things is drying up. And it just became more affordable to have smaller bands, right? The other thing that happens is we get the electrification of guitars,
right,
by Les Paul in the 1940s, and multi-track recording. And so these smaller groups like Louis Jordan and his Timpani 5 are doing music that, in terms of tempo, even in terms of like the harmonic language of the music, is not dissimilar to swing. But instead of having a large horn section, you might have an electric guitar player and a sax player, right?
Okay.
And it's more blues based than even swing is during that time period. There's not a ton of ballads. This is sort of rough and tumble music that's designed to be played live. And it's sort of a reflection of people that have been through a war instead of people that are trying to distract themselves from a war. And so that's what, you know, Louis Prima and, like I mentioned, Wynonie Harris and, you know, a lot of other art, Clyde McFadder, pardon me, was actually a great book that gets into this time period called The Unsung Heroes of Rock and Roll by Nick Tosh, that I recommend if you want to check out some of these overlooked proto rock and roll artists that occupied the junk blues thing. But like in reality, when you listen to 90s swing, that's really what they're doing. Like Cherry Poppin' Daddies and Big Bad Voodoo Daddy didn't have huge horn sections. They had a section, but it was maybe 4 or 5 horns, you know? The Brian Setzer Orchestra wasn't actually he was hiring an orchestra, maybe, but not really. It's like you're not talking about the Glenn Miller or the Benny Goodmans of the world where you've got 24 horn players and a jazz quartet. You know? It's actually way closer to jump blues than it is to swing. Interesting. Which is part of what makes it kind of troubling as you learn more and more about it in retrospect, is because you get a real whitewashing of the music that they're covering or paying homage to.
Right.
Because the majority of jump blues artists, with the rare exception of people like Louis Prima, are people of color. It's Big Joe Turner, it's Ma Maybell, it's Wynonie Harris and Clyde McPhatter. So
interesting. Huh.
So would you say in the 90s, was there actually a band that you would call like a swing band?
The closest thing to it is actually probably Squirrel Nut Zippers. But in reality, that's because they're far more diverse and musically accomplished than any of the actual swing bands. And they're not necessarily doing swing all the time, but they're sort of reaching back into Dixieland and Calypso, and they're reaching into Latin jazz. So like early rumba and samba music and stuff like that, which is happening at the same time as swing in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And then they're beefing up their sound by bringing in additional session people a lot on their records. So they're not just doing swing, but the closest any of those groups to authentically pulling it off is the Squirrel Nut Zippers, I think.
I always felt the recording of that album, that was the biggest album that had Hell on it, even the recording quality was interesting because it felt like a throwback recording. The sound, the production value, because Big Bad Voodoo Daddy was like so polished and shiny sounding, right? Like, and it was just, it sounds, it's weird. When I went back and listened to it just, I don't know how to say it. In a way, basically, it's like it sounds soulless. Like it's just like it's there.
It's anodyne.
Yeah, yeah. It's just there. It's just happening, and it's just like.
That's. I mean, I don't know for a fact, but if I were to guess, an educated guess, it sounds to me like that Squirrel Nut Zippers record, Perennial Favorite. I think it's Perennial Favorites, or it might be something else. I don't remember the title, but that record was probably just a few condenser mics in a room.
Wow.
And probably getting soloists to move closer or further away from the microphones as the time came, and then maybe a vocalist in an ISO booth, which is actually a lot closer to how jump blues records would have been, and some swing records would have been recorded. Because multi-track recording, originally you only have 2 tracks and then maybe 4.
So then why call it swing? Is it just an easier marketing?
I think it's probably a marketing decision, because saying jump blues, the word blues automatically probably calls to mind in the listener of that time period. It's like they're thinking like, oh, so this is like Eric Clapton or Stevie Ray Vaughan or I'm trying to think of like any of the other, because like you also have this like weird moment during that same time period where you have some like Clapton and Stevie Ray Vaughan wannabes coming out. But so I think, and swing is also probably like, people think of like, oh, the dancing and the outfits, and it's just it's a happier thing to think of. Like there's a preset for that in the popular imagination. There isn't one for jump blues.
No,
there isn't. Yeah, I definitely think, as you're telling the story of the fact that there's only basically one band that was swing, it was like, oh, so this is just a marketing
Oh yeah,
thing, because it's just so easy. Like you said, like now you got people. It's easy to say like, oh, go get your like swing outfit on. Let's go to swing dancing. Like you're gonna go be like, let's go to junk blues dancing. Like that's not a good sell.
Yeah,
swing class, junk blues class. Like
it's also just I'm not saying I blame the bands for whatever. I mean, like get your bag, however you want to put it. But like that's in reality kind of like what they're doing, and that's why they're not doing swing the way Benny Goodman would have done swing, or the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra would have done swing, is because like it's expensive to hire 24 fucking horn players,
Oh yeah,
and like tour that. That's where like
no one's making money.
World Inferno, the biggest tour I ever did, we had 10 or 11 people go to Europe once.
Wow.
And that was like, I made like, this is going to sound like a lot, but it's not. I made like $50 a day.
You made $50 a day.
Yeah. Everyone in the band made $50. So
everybody okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's $350 a week. That's like that's a full-time job at McDonald's.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with that band?
I was a fan of the band through a girl that I was dating, and they weren't really a huge band or anything. Initially, they had sort of a cult following, like a very cult following, and their fans were obsessive, and their fans were rabid, and the shows were insane. Like I'm talking about like punk kids stripping down to their underwear and wearing like shoplifting lipstick from CVS and like wearing it as war paint, and then doing like coordinated like dances to the songs, and like it was like these fans were like nothing I'd ever seen. And the music was so diverse. Like some of it sounded like Northern Soul, some of it sounded like the Pogues, some of it sounded like cabaret music. Like which is another thing that the Squirrel Nut Zippers dip into, which is sort of like it's essentially like what's happening during the era of swing, but in Europe, in Germany, and in France. That time period right before Nazism. And so some of it sounded like ska. So it was so diverse and so different and so weird, and the fans were so rabid and culty. Like we had like I'm not kidding. We had fans that followed us like fish.
Really?
Wow. Oh, dude,
this was in America or just in Europe?
Oh no, we had American kids that were flying to Europe and following us for 2 months.
Wow.
We had American kids that would follow us all across the country for 30-day tours.
Damn. $50 a day.
And and I'm making $50 a day. Drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon and doing cocaine. It's basically drywall. I'm not endorsing that, mind you, for your listeners and viewers.
No,
it's all good.
I mean, it was that fan base was uber enthusiastic in a way that very few musicians are ever lucky enough to experience. I did tiny shows in squats, and I did theaters, and I played big European festivals, and our fans were a presence. And not always a welcome one, because our fans like to get fucked up and break shit. So I mean, we actually had a song called Zen in the Art of Breaking Everything in This Room, which didn't help. So
you didn't go to Woodstock 99.
No, I was 17, so 17.
That's it's amazing. I'm thinking, trying to think of like a fan base. Well, I've been to a lot of different shows, and I always felt like the fan base that people were kind of that afraid of was like when I would go see Slayer, or if Slayer was in a show with another band, and the Slayer fans were, we all were, you could point them out, and everyone was like, "All right, Slayer's coming," and everyone move out of the way because the Slayer fans are coming.
I mean, we got kicked off tours because our fans, because we'd be opening for a band and our fans would like take over.
Oh my god, that's ridiculous. That's
like
amazing.
we got kicked off a tour with Mindless Self-Indulgence because of that.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah. And we're like, you guys got to go, and we're like, why? Like, what did we do? And they're like, your fans are like screaming and shouting for you through the first 30 minutes of our set. Like, they're fucking graffitiing our tour bus and like breaking into our dressing room and stealing all of our booze.
Wow.
And we're like, and we're like, that's how the van got so well stocked with liquor. Okay. Because they'd break into Mindless Self-Indulgence's dressing room, steal all their booze, break into our van, and leave it there as like a fucking cat bringing a bird to your front door.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Thank you. We love you. Here, you deserve this.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Wow,
you were better than the people that headlined. That's awesome, though. I mean, that's got to feel really awesome. That all happened naturally, like just the dances and everything. Like that was just
the kids came up with it themselves. I mean, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't have been a fan first. Okay. Like when I first started going to shows, like you got indoctrinated. Like we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then. Yeah. And every time we put out a new record, they'd come up with something new.
Okay, that's cool. And then it just traveled throughout the tour.
And then, because people would see it happen. So like at the first show, like maybe, so like we did this song that has like a breakdown in the beginning called Me and the Mad Monkettes, which is about our friendship with the group Rasputina. They kicked us off tour for that reason too.
Oh my God.
And we were friends with them.
It's truly a punk band.
We're sorry. Like you got it. Yeah. I mean, like the thing is that like the music was super weird and we were weird. So in order to be in World Inferno, when you were in the band, if you were a guy, you had to do every show in a suit.
Wow.
Like a 3-piece suit. And if you were a girl, because we had a lot of girls in the band, they wore like formal evening wear.
That's so interesting.
The whole show.
The whole show. The entire fucking show. And I mean, we played some hot shows. We played a show at the First Unitarian Church basement in Philadelphia that was so hot that the sprinkler system went off because they thought the building was on fire.
Wow.
Oh my God.
And you're in a 3-piece suit.
And it was like a thing in the band of like, we've got to get through the first 6 songs before you're allowed to take off your jacket or like loosen your tie. Like
no reason whatsoever. You guys just
there was
one day someone said like we need a 3-piece suit.
Jack, who was the lead singer of the band, did not want this to look like a band. He wanted it to look like a gang.
Okay.
He wanted it to look like a real collective. And one of the things that he sort of
Peaky Blinders type of like
in a way. Yeah. And it like the band like he had a traditional punk band when he was a teenager called Sticks and Stones. And he wrote a song which is like we started every show with this song. It's called Tattoos Fade. And he wrote a song called Tattoos Fade and he brought it to brand practice and they didn't want to do it. And he's like, okay, band's broken up. I'm going to start the band that will do this song.
What?
Yeah, that's what he did.
That's literally how he broke up the band because of the song.
And then he moved to New York.
Oh wow!
And then from New Jersey, and he started this band. And the band started out as him, a drum machine, and a keyboard player.
Amazing.
And it grew into this, horn section, guitar player, bass player, the whole bit. And like one of the things that he said is he's like, we don't sound like a punk band, but that's because I want to take punk away from the jocks and give it back to the weirdos.
That's good. Wow.
And so like that was like the whole thing of like, yes, we wear suits, we wear evening wear, we wear theatrical makeup, eyeliner, caked white makeup, black lipstick, whatever, to look like silent film stars or something like that. And we wrote songs about Bertolt Brecht and Dante Alighieri and we wrote concept albums about the life of Peter Lorre.
Oh my God.
and like we actually did a theatrical piece based on the life of Peter Lorre that like we toured like at like theater festivals and stuff like that. It was it was different. You know what I mean? It was really, really different because like it's like, I'm sorry if this is like too academic or nerdy, but like it was a band where it's like we're passing around like Nina Simone's autobiography and A Cavalier History of Surrealism by Raoul Venetian, like in the van. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about like situationist slogans, and we're talking about like what our favorite Clash record is. It was, you know, it was a heady conversation, and and the fans took it seriously too. You know, you'd have fans showing up at shows in 3-piece suits and evening wear and with fake blood and confetti and glitter and building giant effigies of characters from the songs. And yeah, every Halloween, every Halloween, on Halloween, we did a big theatrical show called Hallowmass. And it was like, it was a thing. It was an event. It was a theatrical event. It was a big event. And the whole thing was sort of designed around, you know, this, you know, it was designed around celebrating the potency of liminal spaces. I mean, to the kids, it was just an excuse to get fucked up. But like, we're like writing dialogue about this kind of stuff for like banter in between songs and picking out our wardrobe and like hiring like people to teach us how to do fire breathing and hiring aerialists and all of this other stuff. And it was nuts. It was crazy.
Is this on tape anywhere?
Yeah. If you go on YouTube and search our stuff, you'll see it.
Yeah.
I listened to some of the, you sent some tracks and everything like that to listen to, and I was like really enthralled by like how much, like you said, like it's punk, it's cabaret, it's this, it's that. It's like this whole mishmash of things that it's like potent. That's how I would describe it. Like the sound was just like potent. It almost sounded like sounded like a punk version of Tom Waits. Like if Tom Waits all of a sudden was like, I want to do a punk album, and like that's kind of what it was like.
That was and Tom Waits was like a touchstone for us in terms of like,
it makes sense, yeah.
Doing stuff that was weird, because like to us, like our definition of punk was never limited to the Clash or whatever. Like to us, we thought Tom Waits was punk. We thought David Bowie was punk. We thought, we thought fucking Benny Goodman was punk because he had an interracial band in the 1930s and was like, we're playing with an interracial band and, you know, two fingers. So like to us, it's like, that's fucking punk. Do you know what I mean? Like Green Day's not fucking punk. Benny Goodman's more punk than Green Day. Do you know what I mean? Like Jack always had this thing where it was like, he lived in New York in the 80s, and he lived through the sort of Lower East Side squat riots and all that stuff. And he knew all those New York hardcore guys, the Cro-Mags, Agnostic Front, and so on and so forth. But he also worked as a bartender and worked as a DJ at a hip hop radio station.
Really?
During that time period. So like he met Sly Stone and Miles Davis and all these people. And he would always say at shows, Miles Davis could single-handedly kick Agnostic Front's ass.
I believe it.
You know what I mean? And he's like, you want to talk about hardcore and you want to talk about punk? Like dudes like Miles have it all over the people that we think of as punk rock today. Yeah,
I mean, Miles Davis didn't even believe in like genres when they said like, "What's jazz?" He's like, "There's no such thing." Like, what are you talking about? It's music. That's what I do. And I think in some sense, and this is going to sound super self-aggrandizing, but I think that's something that, because our first record came out in 97, True Story of the Bridgewater Astral League. And people tried to lump us in with this in a weird sort of way, but it just sort of never took because we did too many other styles as well. I think
what we got right that a lot of the 90s swing bands got wrong was that when swing came out, when Duke Ellington and Fletcher Henderson and some of the later Bix Beiderbecke recordings and Cab Calloway and all of these, musicians were sort of inventing the genre, it was experimental.
Yeah.
It was new. It was different. People weren't used to music having that kind of velocity and speed and chaos. It was punk rock for the 1930s.
Yeah.
And these bands were like, okay, let's just do these sort of like rote lame interpretations that'll like fit in a Gap commercial.
Oh God, that Gap commercial.
That's what they did.
Well, yeah. I mean,
and again, nerdy stuff we talked about. And this is one of the reasons we've referenced historical figures and things like that, Paul Robeson, Dante Alighieri, all of that stuff over and over again, is there's that Guy Debord quote, true poetry brings all the unsettled debts of history back into play, right? And there's opportunities to do that with a swing revival. The song Zoot Suit Riot is a great example of a missed opportunity in that sense. If anyone knows what the actual history of the Zoot Suits Riots are, it's an intense example of racism in the history of the United States. It's an extremely fucked up story. It was servicemen on leave during World War II chasing down predominantly Chicano-American and Filipino-American men that were dressing in zoot suits in East LA and trying to lynch them for 3 straight days. That's what the Zoot Suit Riots were.
Wow.
Until they got into Watts, and it was sort of like, okay, you've chased all of these Filipino and predominantly Mexican-American kids into Watts, and the black population of Watts is like, we know how to deal with this, and they fought back. And then the city got so pissed off about it that they were like, they banned people from wearing zoot suits. They said that the city of LA proper was not approved territory for off-duty soldiers, Marines, and seamen to go. That's what they had to do to end it. Wow. Like, people died because of the Zoot Suit Riots. And that song is about, if you look at the lyrics, there's one mention in the first verse of soldiers hiding in the trees, but they never explicitly get into it. There's one reference to potentially Latino identity in the song, Run Your Comb Through Your Coal Black Hair. But the rest of the song is, it's like, oh, the soldiers are pissed off because you're stealing their women, which is just buying into a Chicano stereotype of the time period. That's why Emmett Till got fucking lynched. Right?
Yeah.
And this song is like, oh yeah, it's just, throw back a bottle of beer, Zoot Suit Riot. It's like, yeah, this wasn't fun. This wasn't funny, and you missed an opportunity to actually do something punk with it.
Interesting. Damn. Wow.
I had no idea about that song. That's crazy.
Yeah. Right? Like, I think what's interesting too is like how you, like, also like right at the end of what you said, like you had an opportunity to do some punk with it and you didn't, and punk being, I don't even like idea, but like a way to, I guess ideology, but also this way in which to do something. So like, it doesn't have to be just the, what people even stereotype punk as. Like, it's like a mentality, as like you're kind of discussing it, and like you can do that and put it here and put it there. It's like, it doesn't have to be this like one-dimensional understanding. So like, it's like the way you're discussing it is interesting to kind of bring the two, what are two people separated to like two different genres or two different worlds, like together. And like, that really makes a lot of sense.
Punk should be a way of being in the world. It shouldn't be a genre, right? Now, the problem with this is this gets kind of dicey for me as well. Because like the older I get, and this is ironic because I've got the cover of London Calling behind me right now. But the older I get, the more annoyed I kind of get at the Clash sometimes, because I'm like, what's really the difference between the Clash and U2 besides the Clash's music is better? Like in terms of like preachiness, you know what I mean? And how do you walk that line? And how effectively did Joe Strummer actually do it? I don't know. Sometimes I'm not saying that Joe's Joe. I mean, he's dead now, but like that Joe was a sellout or that Joe wasn't sincere, because I don't fucking know the guy. You know what I mean? But there is it was funny, as I've gotten older, I've met more and more people that have had this attitude towards the Clash, and it's made me sort of like reconsider this band that I used to worship. Like London Calling, I used to consider my favorite record. Joe Strummer was like a hero of mine. And then the older I get, the more I'm like, you know, is this? It's sort of like that. Have you ever read that Lester Bangs article about the Clash?
No.
He did this long article following them on one of their first tours where he was like, holy shit, this band's the future of fucking music. Like, these guys are so sincere and they're so with it and they're so all about it, and they treat their fans great. They're not sexist towards women. Their politics are spot fucking on. I can't believe that I'm witnessing this. And then like by the end of the tour, he's like, yeah, but they're also like still trashing hotel rooms and leaving working class, you know, housekeeping staffs to clean up their fucking mess. Like, punk's got to be both of these things. It can't be, well, I'm with it when I want to be, and then when I'd rather just fuck off and party, I don't have to be.
Interesting.
And it's funny because Strummer himself famously said that punk is about respect. It's about, and this is a quote, exemplary manners to your fellow human being. And no one's perfect. No one's going to embody that all the time. I mean, Jesus Christ, I've fucked up so many times in my life, whether it be with friends of mine or girlfriends or whatever. Like, no one's fucking perfect. And in this age of cancel culture, fuck knows that we constantly find out that no one's perfect. But like, I guess my point is, I don't think hagiography is punk either. You know, like, I don't think it's punk to put anyone on a pedestal, even Joe Strummer.
Right. Oh, well, yeah, you're right.
And plus, like, it can't be good for you. We put John Lydon on a pedestal because of the Sex Pistols, and look what happened to him.
Well, I think that's the thing. Like, putting anyone on a pedestal, you're gonna find out that there's a huge problem with that. I mean, I can go on like where my study is, like, for me too, in terms of like beat literature, Kerouac, and everyone, like how they did that to him. Like, Kerouac, everyone puts Kerouac on this pedestal of like this beat forefather or whatever, and he himself even said multiple times and multiple things he wrote, he's like, I am not that. This is not what I wanted. Do not tell me that I'm saying it wrong. And it pretty much, you know, everyone, you know, ignored that part and was like, well, he made a movement. And it's like, no, he wrote a book and you made the movement. And he would have much rather been, you know, Thomas Wolfe or Proust. He said it over and over again.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mame, did you want to say something before? I saw it.
No, I'm just saying, listen. No,
I thought it was, but yeah.
I think it's funny that to the term punk itself, like, anyone who calls themselves punk could not be punk in the future, or could have not been punk in the past. It's just kind of like, to me, it's kind of like it not evolves. It just changes throughout decades and years. So it's just interesting to see.
Not to get too intellectual. Yeah, I can't help it. But
it's like a 101 episode, dude. What you gotta do?
That's what this is.
Punk is like any other avant-garde. It can and will be and has been recuperated. You know, one of the most influential books I ever read in grad school was The Theory Death of the Avant-Garde by Paul Mann. And like, one of the things that book talks about is just sort of like the inevitability of recuperation, because recuperation is there in the seed of every avant-garde. And like, we've seen it over and over and over again. Like, fascism is right there at the birth of modernism with Wyndham Lewis and Pound and Eliot. The sexism is right there at the birth of surrealism.
Mm-hmm.
Sexism is right there at the birth of the beat movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sort of capitalist apology is right there at the birth of postmodernism. If there's an avant-garde, recuperation is already there. It's already happening,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that in some ways, someone calling themselves punk, if that's how you identify, like it is almost, it's not as serious and certainly not as contested, but it is almost like gender self-identification, right? Like if that's how you identify, if that's a cultural marker that makes sense for your way of being in the world, then use it. But be aware of the fact that unlike someone assigning themselves their own gender, this is not that. It is an aesthetic, potentially political movement. Being trans isn't a fucking movement, despite how Fox News would like to spin it. Being trans is, a life decision. It's a personal decision for a person who doesn't feel at home in their own bodies. Choosing or identifying yourself as a punk or as a surrealist or as a Dadaist or as a b-boy, a fan of hip hop or what have you, is not that. You know what I mean? Now, depending on the movement that you're talking about, there's certainly racialized and gendered forms of oppression that go with that, like in hip hop. Like in Chicano culture, like like in jazz, but that isn't the case for all of them,
Right.
And especially because you look at punk music and it's like some of the earliest punk bands were people of color, and we just didn't find that out for years and years and years. Like Pure Hell from Philly, Death from Detroit. They're all people of color. You know what I mean?
That was a good documentary about Death. That was a good.
It wasn't until the the aughts that anyone even knew they fucking existed.
Yeah,
and they were 3 years ahead of the curve.
Oh yeah.
People debate the first punk record, and like the fact of the matter is, if you really want to be honest about it, it's probably Horses by Patti Smith. But who's going to give that credit to a woman?
No. Yeah. Exactly.
Marketing again.
Yeah. It's way easier to do it to the loud British guys that cursed on television.
Yeah.
That's easier to market than the weird poet doing 9-minute songs about the correlation between Rambo and garage rock.
Oh my God, Patti Smith.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, okay. Wow. We're going to have to do like a whole series with you. But I think because this has been great. Like there's so much to be unpacked. And I think like the way you connected all these things, like swing, it's, rebirth, it's birth, it's, the jump blues and into punk and everything. It's really quite amazing and interesting. And I'm, and for me, like, I know in our email, I sent like these songs and I'm like, I don't even think we have to go through them because I don't know even if any of them at this point, pass, but we could go through real quick.
Hell passes the nostalgia test.
So Hell is still good. Like, and I would agree with that. I think it definitely is something that I would listen to. The rest I listen to. Yeah.
And I would seek it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would seek it out. Zoot Suit Riot is just so terrible that no one should seek it out for reasons that I've already laid out.
Yeah, that was yeah. It was a jump
jiving whale borders on that. Like if it came on the radio, like I whatever, but I certainly wouldn't look for it. I mean, chances are I'd probably change it, so that probably should go with Zoot Suit Riot. And then what was the other one?
I think it's You and Me in the Bottom.
You and Me in the Bottom. I have a sentimental attachment to that song because I actually like the movie Swingers.
That's the thing. It's attached to that movie. Yeah.
And like that's a great scene. That's a really great scene in that movie. Yeah. So I'd say that passes the nostalgia test, but maybe only for me. Maybe in an objective way it would fail it. But
okay. Well, I mean, Matt, wow. we have some time still because in the email too, I asked you about to the ranking. Like Manny and I love to ask some of our guests if they've seen the Rocky movies. We asked them this question because we did a whole Rocky franchise marathon in the early parts of the podcast, which
we
almost
regretted.
Yeah, it almost destroyed
us.
Watching that,
we love Rocky, but
we love
because people from Philly bitched about it.
No, it was literally a fucking marathon.
Because that'll happen.
It was literally a marathon, and we had a guest on for every single
except for Rocky 3.
One except for Rocky 3, and we were just so like exhausted just watching and then taking notes and then talking about it, and we're like, wow, what did we do to ourselves that we made ourselves do?
We had to take a break from the podcast after that.
Yeah, because like it was with the podcast, we like put movies, then we like take a break, we do music, then we take a break, we do commercials, we do toys. But like when we had to watch 6 movies in a row and then also extensively break them down again.
Oh, so you include 5?
We included 1 through Balboa. That was the franchise.
Yeah, we had to put it in there. So we
because like Sly is even like that movie doesn't exist.
Oh, he gave it a 0 or a 1.
Yeah, what did he give it? A 1 or he said he like wished it never happened. That's why he did Balboa, because he
wanted a different ending to the franchise.
Yeah, actually, for many of the franchise, he had been trying to kill Rocky Balboa for many of the movies. Like there were so many endings he wanted where he died. He's just like when we got to 5, we were like, he's been trying to kill this character forever, and no one's allowing him.
I don't think you could have killed him in 6 because then it would have been really bad for him to die at like an exhibition.
Finding out that Adrian died was a bummer enough.
Yeah, that sucked. Yeah. That sucked because like the whole thing of all the movies were about their love story. Like
and
then
that one's still kind of Yeah.
I mean, that was still a major part of the movie. I mean, I've never seen an absent character loom larger over a film than Adrian did.
Exactly. Yeah. So Matt, how do you rank them? If you had to rank them from best to worst in your way, in your eyes, like how you see it, how would they go? How would it go?
I have a weird system for this, and I have a weird explanation for this. I'll give you the ranking, and then I can explain it.
Okay, go ahead.
The best one is 1.
Okay.
Hands down. Second is 4.
Okay.
Third is 3. Fourth is Balboa. Fifth is 2. And then the worst one is 5.
Hey.
Why do I rank it that way?
Go ahead.
I grew up in an era of Philadelphia sports culture where the Phillies had never won a World Series in my lifetime. The Flyers had never won a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. The Eagles had yet to win a Super Bowl, and the Sixers hadn't won a World Championship since the year after I was born. The thing that appealed to us about Rocky was his underdog status. So the reason I put 2 next to last is because he's not an underdog in 2.
No.
They're on equal footing in 2. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then he wins.
Mm-hmm.
It was like like the reason that Philadelphians like that movie is because it's like, oh, we finally won one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like to me, maybe I'm too jaded of a Philadelphian in that way because I'm like, fuck you. You know what I mean? I don't want the fictional championship.
Yeah.
You know, I want a real one. I want to go to a parade, damn it. You know, and I didn't get to do that until 2008 when the Phillies won. So, and then when the Eagles won a Super Bowl, it was like the day after the Eagles Super Bowl was like going to an Irish wake because it was nothing but people talking about their dead relatives, how they wish they'd been alive to finally see this.
Oh my God.
That was seriously what every bar in the Philadelphia area was.
Really?
Like.
Oh my God.
I wish my pawpaw had been alive to see that. He would have loved that one. I'll tell you something. That Philly special right there would have brought a tear to his eye. You know.
Wow.
So that's my explanation. 1, he's the ultimate underdog.
Yeah.
4 is the first time you have a legitimate sense that he could lose since 1. right? In 3, you actually see him lose, and then he wins it back, right?
Yeah.
In Balboa, it's close to 1.
Yeah.
It just doesn't have the nostalgia for me that 4 and 3 do. I mean, for the longest time, the first cell phone I ever had, I made in MIDI my own Hearts on Fire ringtone. That's how much I love 4. Okay. And like uploaded it onto my phone. My so fucking, funny. Shitty Nokia brick.
That's so funny.
And so like that's why Balboa is there. 2 is not as bad as 5 because nothing is. But it also just irks me in a way, because it's like they're still trying to pass him off as the lovable underdog, right? But it's like, you took the champion of the world to the limit and you got a rematch. You're not a fucking underdog, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say your rankings are really fucking solid. They're kind of close to mine.
That was mine.
Yeah, those were yours.
At the end.
I always say that 2 doesn't exist without 1.
Yeah.
2 is just an extension of 1 if you needed a director's cut or like an extended cut. And you spend most of the time listening to him read 2 is what, like, it's just too long. and I'm like,
scenes.
It's just so long. The scenes are so, I'm like, wow. And you never just say, hey, let's watch 2. Like, you just don't.
No one does.
Like, no one's like, yo, I feel like watching Rocky 2 today. Like, that's not a thing. And even when we used to be on TNT or whatever at night, you really didn't want to get stuck with the marathon of being on number 2. Like,
no, you wanted 3 and 4.
Yeah.
I've watched 3 and 4 back to back 100 times more frequently than I've ever watched 1 and 2.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then 5 was just like, why did this movie even
exist?
Like, it was like 90s trash to the T. Like, what 90s was.
Horrible.
Like, any bad movie in the 90s, that's what it looked like. It's just, it was so terrible. You know that there are people who have ranked like a 6.5-2. Like, we've gotten these rankings in like comments. I'm like, how does anyone put 5 anywhere but the last one? Like, you can't.
Yeah, it doesn't belong anywhere but the last one.
It's terrible. It's one of the worst movies.
There's one guy who argued that it was better than 2, and I was like, you're insane. Like,
I would rather watch Judge Dredd than Rocky 5. Like, or it's. But
like, but there's so many quotes you make from it. I'm like, as a joke, like, you don't do it.
I rewatched 5 recently just because I was like, I haven't seen this in so long.
You got it.
And I rewatched it, and the thing that makes it completely unwatchable is his fucking kid and Tommy Morrison.
Fucking Tommy Gunn. Oh my God, he's so terrible.
Which is like he was a terrible fucking boxer, and he's an even worse actor.
The acting is so bad. And then this kid, he took my room, and his fucking earring. So bad.
You know what the funny thing is, if you think about it, and what I thought of when I rewatched it. This was maybe 5 or 6 months ago. When I rewatched it.
God!
But what I thought of was, man, he's really trying to fix this with the Creed movies.
Yeah.
He's really trying to fix the Rocky as mentor image in the Creed movies. To me, that's what the Creed movies are about. It's not a cash grab for Stallone. It's, I got to fix this side of Rocky's personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so
Did you
weird.
like the Creed ones?
I liked the first one. And the reason I liked the first one is because it was character driven. It wasn't adrenaline driven.
Yeah.
The second one was just like, okay, I understand the impulse of wanting to rehash 4 because, like I said, I think it's the second best Rocky movie.
I mean, it's also like it was 80s, like, so it worked in the 80s.
And you're also never gonna recapture something like that.
No.
It would be like Goodfellas 2.
Yeah, you just can't do it.
That would be hilarious.
That like if Goodfellas 2 came out, I would watch it, but I would be like shit-faced, knee-walking drunk before I started it. Like someone would have to like roll me into the theater in a fucking wheelbarrow.
Yeah,
that is hilarious. Yeah, because like when I think the second Creed, was that the one when he was also training in the desert? Like,
yes.
That was so weird.
And think about it. It's the mirror image of 4.
Yeah.
He's training in a snowy tundra, and now he's training in the desert. It was so transparently obvious that he was like trying to recatch lightning.
But you don't have that 80s sound. You could like the music.
But you couldn't like 80s soundtracks like that. I mean, the whole soundtrack of 4 is phenomenal.
There's no easy way out. There's no short way out.
You know that song's about a divorce?
Yeah. And
it's so crazy.
And like, dude, like the whole reason South Park did, we're gonna do a montage is 4.
Yeah. Montage of a montage. Why? Yeah. I mean, amazing that you basically were watching a recap of all the other movies just in case you missed. Like,
did you ever see the interview where he was talking about that, and he's like, it was in Russia in Eisenstein, you know what I mean? I was like, what? Did Sly just drop Eisenstein? But
he's a weird genius.
I swear to God, there's an interview where he says something like that. He's like, we're in Russia, you know, Eisenstein invented the montage, you know.
There are so many weird stories about like scripts that he's written that were like real serious films, and then he had this quote about stop or my mom will shoot, and it's like one of the funniest things that I've ever heard, and it's just like, how did he even like come up with that? Like, it was something like he said, like, Stop or My Mama Shoe was like the worst movie ever. Even with alien technology, which we don't know about yet. And he says a flat worm can create a better movie. And he just goes off on his own film. And I'm like, did he just improvise that in the moment? Like, he's a weird genius that also makes a lot of garbage.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
No, I was just watching. I went down the rabbit hole of Rocky documentaries and stuff, and I was just watching something on Instagram about them training and like going over the fight and like why he chose an actor versus a boxer to do it and stuff. It's just so crazy how good Carl Weathers was and how much he studied to do this part. Like, how much they were all in on this movie, like, and why it makes it such a great film. Like, it's.
And by the way, my absolute favorite arc in the history of Arrested Development is the Carl Weathers arc, hands down. The best part of that show.
He's a great. I mean, R.I.P. Carl Weathers. Like anything he was in was. I mean, Happy Gilmore,
Predator.
Predator. Like, come on, isn't he like a classic meme, right? Like him and, Arnold, like shaking
the hand,
the hand thing.
So weird.
Yeah, it's so weird. But go ahead. You were saying
it's funny, like talking about it now. I'm kind of realizing that like it's different because on this show he's a washed-up TV star, but like a lot of BoJack Horseman, you could make the argument is kind of about Stallone.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Have you seen his new show, King of Tulsa or Tulsa King?
It's great.
It's hilarious, actually.
I haven't seen it. Is it good? I gotta watch it.
It's really, really good. That's
funny.
Yeah.
One of the things that I love about it is he doesn't run away from Rocky.
No, he doesn't.
You know what I mean? Like you can imagine that this dude is Rocky if he never gets that shot and just keeps working his muscle for the mob.
For God's sake!
Like if he just kept working for Gazzo, you know what I mean?
The ball?
Like, Yeah, like he's 100% some dude that you would see at Cookies, which isn't even called Cookies anymore, on 11th in Oregon. You know what I mean? Fucking roughing some guy up at a pool table. Hey, where's my $50? You fucking
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's
I gotta
so
check it
funny.
out then.
You gotta check it because the first couple episodes are really funny when he gets there and he's shaking down a legal weed dispensary. He's going and he's like, how do you do this? Who's the guy who's like backing this? And he's like shaking them down. It's a legal business. He's just like, it's really funny actually. Like he's a maniac. I love it.
Yeah, he's great.
Matt, thank you. So this was so fun. A lot of learning. I mean, I can't wait to re-listen to this episode and everyone out there.
Didn't drop too many F-bombs.
Oh no, dude, we curse all the time.
Okay, this podcast is all about.
Podcast. Are you kidding? We interrupt each other. We say fuck a lot. Yeah. If I'm in a pissed off mood about remakes, because I fucking hate remakes and sequels, I'm saying like stop the 80s remake. You just can't get that magic back. I really go off. Yeah, hashtag not my Dalton.
I fucking hate Cobra Kai for that reason.
Oh, that's a hot take.
So that's a hot take because I'm okay with Cobra Kai because I thought they did an okay job, but then now it's gotten way too far. Like I was okay with the first season. Now, like the recent one, I'm like, what the fuck am I watching at this point? Like this.
I have also never seen any, not a second of any of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies.
Don't worry about that. I've seen
because the thing is, I loved those books so much as a nerdy, introverted, isolated middle schooler, and also the fucking Ralph Basho like live animation shit or whatever.
Yeah,
that it's like, I already have an image of how that stuff lives in my head, and I don't want it corrupted by anyone else's CGI New Zealand fucktastic whatever.
I could tell you that we've never put that to the test, and I don't want to like ever watching those more than once. Like I watched them once, and those are the kind of movies I'm like, I don't need to watch it again. No. Like it was fine. I just don't need to watch it again.
It's too long.
Just before you go, 2 questions. Are you excited about Goonies 2?
No. Is that really happening?
Yeah.
They're gonna fuck it up. They're gonna fuck
it all up.
They're gonna fuck it up.
Fuck it up.
I don't care. They could reanimate the corpse of Stanley Kubrick and they would fuck that movie up.
Yes.
Yo, I would love a Stanley Kubrick version though. That'd be crazy. It'd be 4 hours long.
Of a 40-year-old Goonie?
Yeah,
that would be crazy.
Yeah, zombie that would be Kubrick fun. Goonies 2. Okay, actually, I would love that. That would be fire.
4 hours long. It's just like
they're doing Happy Gilmore 2. Also, dude, the 90s are like.
What are they doing? What are they doing about Chunk? He's the most popular character in that fucking movie, and like like I'm not trying to be like un-PC, but it's just like the medical reality of people with those sorts of conditions. There's no way that guy's still alive.
No.
Yes. Well, in the movie, no, he's. I think they showed.
I'm sure that actor is. Yeah, but there's no way that Chunk, the character, could be fucking alive.
No. I'm
trying to think. So what are they going to do? Just shoehorn in another like mentally challenged person or whatever the popular parlance is?
I was thinking the fat guy, the kid. I forgot. Chunk? Yeah, you're talking about Chunk, the mentally challenged.
The guy they locked in the basement.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
Hey, you guys. Yeah.
But like actuarially speaking, Chunk would be dead too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
he would be dead. You're right. They're not gonna have him in there because they're not going after that family.
That was the Sloth was the character.
Yeah, Sloth. But that's what I'm saying. Like Sloth is him and Chunk are the most popular characters in that movie. Yes. And if you're being actuarially serious, they'd both be fucking dead.
Yeah, you can't. It just like. I just don't understand what the point of bringing the point is there's no original ideas anymore. It's over. Like no original IP is over.
Well, the point is this: like we have a show called the Nostalgia Test because we like live in the past of all these things, and the '90s right now are like a resurgence like crazy, and people are doing cash grabs on it. Like you got Happy Gilmore 2 coming, you got Goonies, you had Roadhouse. That was the 80s, though.
That was the worst.
And that was ridiculous and very forgettable.
There's going to be 3
there
more.
Hasn't been a memorable movie And a very.
You know what? I'm glad they haven't fucked with Bloodsport.
But there was a second Bloodsport.
Yeah, but that was like in the 80s, in like the tradition of like 80s sequels.
Oh, yes. Okay.
But he needs.
They're coming out with it. There's someone.
You know what presaged all this, by the way? Broadway.
Because of
Broadway musicals. There has been no original IP in Broadway outside of Sondheim, and he's fucking dead now. It's all like Wicked was based on a book, The Lion King was based on a Disney movie, Spider-Man was based on the Marvel franchise.
That was a disaster.
They've remade Cabaret how many times now?
Yeah, and they have Back to the Future.
Yeah, and they keep trying to recapture what Alan Cumming did with Cabaret in the early 2000s, and they just won't because there's only one Alan Cumming.
Yeah. I think it's like they just don't want to take a risk on anything. Where like in the 80s and 90s, it was like, this movie's about what? Sounds great to me. Let's fucking try it.
I mean,
here's $10 million.
You could argue now that it's because there's so much out there. It's so expensive to make a film. You want to make sure you're making a profit. So they're like, well, either we take a chance, which we can't, or we just
even if it sucks, people will hate watch it for the nostalgia factor.
Absolutely. I'm gonna fucking watch it because I want to yell about it and be on this show about it, with our 100 followers and like scream about it. And I just fucking watched it. So that's what we're gonna do. And that's safer to the studio than actually coming out with an original movie.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, Matrix 5 is coming, guys. It's coming.
Okay, we got to stop. Matrix 5. Okay, it's got to stop. I don't know what they're going to do. Put everyone back in the video game. Listen,
they should just Matrix go into Jumanji. Like, just make everything get washed.
Yeah, Manny and I said on an episode, and then we got to wrap this up. But on an episode of Nostalgia Test News, which is out in August, if you're going to reboot something or do something, it should be a movie that was really bad. And that's the only way you could do it. Like, they're going to reboot Anaconda. Go for it. Like, that movie was trash to begin with.
Yeah,
let's fucking reboot it. Just reboot something stupid. Like, that's what I want.
Snakes on a Plane.
Yeah.
Let's have another one.
I don't care about 7 of those.
Why not?
Yeah. Like, who cares about 7 of those?
That show, Rescue 911, they're going to do an episode called Bee-nado, where it's a tornado of bees. Yes. Which actually sounds way scarier than Sharknado. Like a tornado
that sounds real, though. That's just a swarm. Like, that's what that is.
Yeah, no,
Bee-nado.
That's a swarm of fucking
swarms of bees. That's
hummingbird NATO. But so
Matt, so pretty.
Yeah, they're so pretty. Matt, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for your Rocky ranking.
Thank you,
everything.
Appreciate it. And I love the tangents. I'm surprised you didn't do the drop, Dan, because that was the nostalgia tangent.
It was amazing. I know I messed that up. Maybe I'll force it in.
Matt, we're gonna have to get you on, not on a 101 then, because it seems like we could have many conversations.
I'm down, guys. I'm down.
Excellent.
Let me know.
We'll reach out. Everyone, like this episode, share it with someone that you feel like would enjoy this conversation about the 90s resurgence of swing, a history of music, and also just a whole amazing deep conversation on punk and just punk mentality, and also Rocky. If you love Rocky, that last 15 minutes of our podcast, share it with someone. Just share the podcast. Like it, comment, review. And Manny, I'll see you on the next test. Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Later.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please subscribe to the Nostalgia Test podcast to know when new episodes drop. Don't forget to leave us 5 stars and a positive review so more people can find the podcast. Share your thoughts and memories on today's topic on our Twitter @NostalgiaTest and on Instagram @TheNostalgiaTest. Tune in next time, because you never know what pop culture will pop up on The Nostalgia Test.